Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. Alright, hi, this is Attican and welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is part 4 of our look at Summiteer, the third scenario from the Crossing the Andes DLC. And the first thing we notice, and we saw this at the end of the last episode, Beatrix is gone. What happened to her? Well, to make this tougher on us, what they did was they had Don Lorenzo buy out Beatrix. So those two companies merged. So we're kind of playing the result of two very hard opponents who built their empires as quickly and as well as they could during the time that we took here, and then merged into one big company that we've got to try to compete with. So that was a nice touch by the developers to set up that kind of a challenge where we've got this one big company to fight against. However, if you noticed, we're already bigger than they are by a fairer margin. So we are in wonderful shape because we have a larger company than our opponent, and we have and so they're going to try to buy us out. We're going to try to buy them out. Well, who do you think's going to win in that battle? Because here's the deal. In case you hadn't figured this one out, your share price is driven primarily off of your company value. Well, the bigger your company value, the higher your share price. So relative to Don Lorenzo, our share prices will be more. Also relative to Don Lorenzo, we are obviously making money at a faster rate. So we're going to have more money to buy cheaper shares than Don Lorenzo, who's going to have less money to buy more expensive shares. That puts us in the driver's seat. So when I saw this and I knew we were going to have to buy him out, and I knew that we were that much bigger going into this, I said, okay, good. We did all right. That means that's a validation that we played the first parts of this pretty well. All right, so let's move on. So now we have to get into the automobile business. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, there is a warehouse in Buenos Aires, which is just to the east here of Rosario. And in Buenos Aires, that warehouse will take 7 automobiles every week. It's very similar to the other warehouses we've dealt with in this, the Niter and the steel that's up here in Asunción. So what we're going to do is leverage the great steel industry we've already got going up in Cusco, which I believe right now is a level 5 steel industry, being properly supplied with coal and iron from mines that we own. So we've got a real good profitable business going there in steel. But rather than selling it off to Asunción, what we're going to do now is move our goods to an automobile factory that we place in Rosario. And now we can move the steel down to Rosario and use it for the automobiles. And of course, the automobiles are more complicated. They also need gasoline, or refined oil, which we make in a refinery after we get oil. So we need oil well and we need a refinery. So here we're setting up a bypass around Asunción, and we're going to run the line on into Rosario. And while I was talking about the deal with the merger of our opponents, you probably noticed I purchased an industry in Rosario that was reasonably priced, and then immediately tore it down and put in the car industry. So now we can create cars in Rosario, and this line we're setting up will actually help us with the delivery of both. And we're going to run our steel, divert the steel from Asunción and take it down to Rosario to that car industry. And then to get our refined oil, there's an oil well up there a little to the north and east of Asunción, and we're going to use that as the source of our oil. And you'll see in a moment what we do in order to get our refined oil down here, because you have to get both of them into Rosario in order for the car industry to produce cars. So that gives us a bypass around Asuncion and gives us the ability to go straight from Cusco to Rosario. So now we just go out there and find those trains that were on that line delivering to Asuncion. We drop Asuncion from the mix, and we're going to deliver our steel directly into Rosario to our car industry, because that's a higher markup, and plus main reason that's what the scenario is asking us to do. So we'll go through and change all those out, and let's hustle through this, and I'll come back and explain what's going on with the oil here in a moment. Now, quickly, right here, I wanted to say, you see me expanding the car industry, and I'm expanding it. And even though I don't even have oil industry started, and I don't have any steel down there yet. And it's going to take a long time for steel to get all the way down there to get us going. But I'm doing those expansions now. One, I have the money, and two, want to make sure to guard against the fact that Rosario could decline in its population, and if it does decline, we would lose the ability to do some of those upgrades. So I wanted that car industry big right away because we have a great demand nearby in Buenos Aires. Now, here's what we're going to do about the oil. What we did was buy out that meat industry in Asuncion, and we're going to replace it with, of course, a refinery so that we can make the petroleum or gasoline or whatever they call that is needed by the car industry. So now our petroleum industry is going to be here in nearby Asuncion, and we've got, as I said, an oil well just up here to the north that we can use to feed Asuncion, and so it will have what it needs to produce oil. Now we're going to set up the line that can deliver that oil to Rosario, so we'll have a city-to-city line between Asuncion and Rosario, and that will allow us to move our refined oil to Rosario to our car industry. Now, the interesting thing here too is we don't want that refinery to just sit there at a level 1. We want to be able to expand it, and you'll see how we're going to attack that in just a moment. Now, just as we're doing this, an auction came up for that beer or chicha industry in nearby Orqueta, and we want that, absolutely want that. So we just bought that, or did we? You know what? I goofed up here. Interesting. No matter, but our good buddy Don Lorenzo just bought that beer industry. Would have loved to have had it ourselves because it is actually going to be a big part of our strategy for how we're going to be able to upgrade our refinery. So now we're going to set up the refinery and start feeding it oil from this field that we just bought up here they're called Jackson Field. So it's an oil well, and we're going to run it down to Asuncion, of course, and drop off the oil there so that it can be turned into refined oil, which now our city-to-city line between Asuncion and Rosario will take that refined oil on down to Rosario. So that's pretty simple stuff. So let's move ahead a bit. it's probably worth a quick note here too. You see me choosing which station to run into, you got to be careful there. If I had stayed with that first selection of stations running that oil, it would have actually, believe it or not, gone all the way down to Rosario, used Rosario to turn around and come back and go to that station in Asuncion, and then go back to Rosario in order to turn around to go back. So you got to be, if you're going to use the dedicated lines, be careful which one you pick. That's the point here. So now we're checking to see how much oil do we need. We need 1.3 a week at our current level of setting down there in our car industry, and we can make 0.6. So we definitely want to upgrade that. But as you can see, we can't now. Why is that? That's another concept I've covered in other videos, but a quick review for you. The city has to be a certain size to be able to support the industries as they expand. And it just makes perfect sense. A really small city wouldn't have enough people. It wouldn't have enough health care, transportation, dining, housing. It wouldn't have anything big enough to support a really larger industry. So for your industries to be big, to update or upgrade them, you've got to grow the city. So we're going to do an interesting little city building exercise here. We're going to take that Orqueta that I mentioned up there where we messed up and let Don Lorenzo beat us out of that brewery. We're going to help him out a little bit here, unfortunately. But we're going to set up a two-city cluster between Asuncion and Orqueta. And we're going to use a pass-through warehouse to do that. So, and I wanted to do this because of pass-through. I don't think I've shown you one of those in a long time. So I wanted to show you a pass-through warehouse and how well they work. And also wanted to do something a little different here, because if you'll notice, we don't have meat anywhere. We bought that meat industry in Asuncion and knocked it down and put in a refinery. So what are we going to do? Well, it's not to worry. We're going to come up with an alternative source for the meat part of our equation. We'll get the beer from Orqueta. Unfortunately, we're getting it from our buddy Don Lorenzo, but that's the way it is. And what we're doing here, because it's a pass-through, really only need the connection, the crossovers, for the middle two lanes, because those are the two we want to use for the city-to-city line, if you will, the line that's going from Asuncion to the warehouse to Orqueta back to the warehouse, and just keeps going back and forth like that. We only need the two middle lines, and we want to reserve the outside two lines for other materials coming into that warehouse. So this is like a classic setup I've done in other videos of a pass-through warehouse. And as I said, with the exception of we don't have meat. So I don't know if it's been a while since we've seen one of those, so let's go ahead and walk through this. The idea is that in Asuncion, a train will be set to go to the warehouse, then to Orqueta, back to the warehouse, back to Asuncion. Round trip. See, there it is. And what we'll do is we'll set up we'll set up both of them to go into platform 2, put a train on it. Notice we're starting to run Santa Fe's. And then we're going to build another line exactly like it, only this time we're going to say go from line 3 to line 3. And you'll notice we didn't put any crossovers or switches in the warehouse, because we want everything on the right to go one way and everything on the left to go back the other way. So now as long as we copy these in sets of 2, we're going to keep having alternate trains that go platform 2, platform 3, platform 2, platform 3. So now we're going to get very good flow. We can run a whole bunch of trains and get very good flow. But since we're missing the meat now, we want to load resources into that warehouse, and we want to go get the meat. So that's the idea of the warehouse. And I guess there's one other concept to talk about. Any goods manufactured in the cities that's needed in the other city, that's the first thing that will get picked up. Like in either city, they'll pick up manufactured goods. then they'll pick up passengers and mail if we keep it as an automatic. And later on, we can, as they get bigger, we can turn it into a freight only line. But for the smaller cities, we can keep it automatic. And it'll take some passengers and freight or mail, but they won't give much. These are small cities, and any extra room they have, they will pick up the goods that are in the warehouse and deliver it to the other city. So by having these lines like this, we actually are moving some passengers and mail, but that's just a triviality. But we're moving manufactured goods and raw materials between the two cities. So we're going to go through here. We're hooking up logs. So I'm going to fast forward through this because this is just hooking them up. And notice it is dedicated line into that platform 4 because we want that city-to-city stuff to just flow unimpeded, and we want our raw materials and stuff to come into the warehouse from the outside tracks. So I guess the only thing interesting about this one is there anything interesting about this one? Yeah, I did something a little different here, just to be doing something different. I had the train come in, and it's going to loop around and then go back. So see, that's double track, but it's actually got a loop in the middle. So it's going to go out and loop around, and it's all going to be kind of one-way track. And when it goes back, it's going to go, bypass the city, and then come back around and hook up with itself on the other side. So it's just forming a loop going through it. No big deal. I just thought it'd be different. So we're going to run a kind of a one-way loop running through the warehouse. I don't know that it's any more efficient. I know some people swear that if you do it that way, you get faster throughput through the warehouse, but I'm not sure about that. I haven't done any studies to say one way or the other. All right, so let me just kind of fast. So that was kind of cute, but let's just fast forward through the rest of this. It's just straight up running goods into a warehouse. No big deal. Now here is how we address the problem of the missing meat. We're going to go up there to Caramba, which is a city nearby that has a meat industry. And we're going to set up Caramba so that it can feed our two cities in our little two-city cluster with the meat. Now, its sole reason for being, so to speak, is to provide meat to these other two cities. And it will get some goods back. If we run a line directly like this with a automatic line, it's going to get some beer from Horchata, so that's good. It'll be a profitable line. We'll move some passengers and mail. But the main reason we have it is to give us the meat that we need. So I'm kind of at this point kind of going back and remembering, just kind of looking at the dates to see how we're looking, see how fast we want to move on making that purchase of 15%. We have to buy at least 15% of Don Lorenzo fairly early. Actually, the thing is buy 15% of any competitor, but of course by the time we get that, the only guy we have, our only competitor is Don Lorenzo. So if I'd had the option, by the way, I would have bought 15% of somebody earlier and wouldn't have even cared. Once I found out they were merging, I wouldn't even care which one was going to win. In fact, I would love to buy the loser and buy as much of the loser as I could, because then any money you invest in that, you're going to get a 50% bonus on it when the other person buys you out. So it could have been a real money maker to be able to invest in Beatrix and then have Don Lorenzo win the battle and have him come back and pay us a 50% premium on our money. We could spend 10 million and get 15 million back. That's a pretty good deal and pretty quick turnaround. So now I'm setting up the second line that's going to end up going to Asuncion, and I want to give it that little long run up so we don't have any traffic ties here. So again, this is my kind of hybrid that I'm using right now to control the junctions at the city. It's kind of a combination of point-to-point, city-to-city lines up here at the station, with a nice long run up to allow a bunch of trains to come in there without tying one another up, and still using the trunk line. So I've talked about this before. So anyway, here's the idea. We're going to send cattle to Carumba. Carumba's going to produce plenty of meat. That meat's going to be shipped off to Horqueta and to Asuncion. So now that piece of the equation is set for our two-city cluster. Then all we have to do is build out our two-city cluster with all the rest of the resources. Now here's the point where I actually look at upgrading our trains. We've been running the Mikados. Now we want a faster, more powerful train, mostly faster, and that's the Santa Fe. So we're going to upgrade to the Santa Fe, and the way we're going to do that is to repay this bond, open a bigger bond, and use that money to allow us to upgrade. And you notice there a little message, 1% shares. Don Lorenzo's starting to pick away at us and buy our stock, but we're honestly not concerned. Not concerned because, again, we're bigger than he is. We've got more buying power than he has, a bigger company. And as long as we keep growing and doing the right things and keep growing our business, we will stay bigger than him. Now, if we just sat around and let our money accumulate to try to buy him back and didn't keep growing at this stage, he could catch us. And if he catches us on company shares or on company value, then it's going to get a lot tougher. Now, we could still do it, but we'd have to really duke it out with him. So now I realize, well, hey, we've finally got our little business going here, but man, we need to run some autos over to Buenos Aires. So we're going to build that link, and this is really irritating right here, that our car industry, for whatever reason, when it expanded, it came out in that strange shape with that triangle going out, and it's just like it's intentionally trying to block our tracks. So we've got to find a way to get around that car industry, and I don't want to tear it down. I mean, I could tear it down and build it back up. That would cost a fortune, and just don't want to go there. So now we're just going to have to bend our track out away from that car industry. Remember the way it works in this game. If you own the industry, then you've got to account for it and deal with it. If you don't own them, you can just rip right through. You lay your track wherever. But once you own the industry, then you've got to look at it. So we're looking for a lane as far out as we can get it that isn't busy. So that's that one there, number 2. And we'll have to run this strange little deal where we run out away from Rosario and then loop our way back around. But no big deal. It's a short line, and it's no biggie. So we're going to double track it back, of course, and hopefully it'll fit in here next to our industry. And see, we can't even go all the way down. We're going to have to tie it off back a little ways, but no big deal. So it'll still work. It'll work just fine. We'll run like 4 trains back and forth in an automatic mode, and whenever they can, they will pick up automobiles. And we should have automobiles there ready to go right now, because we've had steel deliveries coming in. We've had refined oil from Asuncion coming in. So we're going to tell it to prioritize cars. So if you have cars, by all means grab them, but otherwise grab what's there and take it to Buenos Aires. And there you can see we had six or 7 cars ready to go. So there goes our first autos over to Buenos Aires. Won't take us too awful long to get that done, particularly with the level 4, and particularly when we get so that we've got enough steel coming down, and we do have enough steel coming down because we've got a level 5 steel industry providing. They have to come a long way, but once the flow starts, you're going to keep getting a pretty even flow. Really, the distance that you have to travel, this freight has to travel, is irrelevant. It just slows down the initial start. So the thing I'm looking at right here and thinking, what's the hardest thing to do? I'm not worried about buying Don Lorenzo. I am worried about connecting 4 cities of 125,000. So we've got to go find some cities that we want to grow. And here's where I'm just kind of not a that auto hiring stuff. You get these conflicts. They stop your trains. You have to go deal with it. It's a pain, but I think at this point it's probably less of a pain than having to hire each one individually. So overall, I'm pretty happy it exists, that functionality exists. And now, did we do the promoter? No, I didn't use the promoter. Could have. Actually, Asuncion, I thought about putting him on Asuncion and see if we could grow that one. All right, I take it back. I did. All right. Thank you. I'm glad to see I didn't waste that opportunity. I want to grow Asuncion because we want to be able to upgrade that refinery. So as soon as we get the Asuncion big enough, we can upgrade the refinery, and we'll keep and be able to pump more oil, because that right now, so when we pass 20, we got big enough to expand at one time. So now we've got more capacity, and we want to make sure now that we've got enough output up here in our oil field to at least match the requirements down there in our refinery. So we take care of that, and now we got to get back to looking at these 4 cities. And one of the things, obviously, that promoter, I could have used the promoter on one of the 4 bigger cities, one of the 3 bigger cities I want to target to grow. We have one that's big enough now. I think it's Santiago, but I'm not honestly, I'm not certain. But I definitely wanted Asuncion to grow, so I used the promoter there.
Your progress cannot be stopped, but I am honestly asking myself if cars will be more than just toys at some point of time.
All right, so now we've got our automobile industry rocking and rolling. We're shipping autos into Buenos Aires. We've met our task. So let's wrap up this episode right here. And when we come back, we'll start focusing on building making sure we have 4 cities of 125,000 in our network. And we'll start working on taking out our old buddy Don Lorenzo. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.